Isaac Scora's genitals were about to change the course of interstellar warfare. The human soldier, part of an elite covert operations unit, found himself stripped bare in a sterile UNA's medical facility, facing a wide-eyed alien technician whose mandibles quivered with shock. What is that? Janus, the young UNA's medical tech, stumbled backward, her multifaceted eyes fixed on Isaac's exposed anatomy. Isaac, momentarily forgetting his precarious situation as a captive on the UNA's homeworld, couldn't help but smirk. You mean you've never seen one of these before? Janus's exoskeleton paled, her respiratory vents fluttering rapidly. She reached for the facility's alarm, her appendage trembling. Biological weapon! Containment breach! Sirens blared throughout the high-security complex. Isaac's smirk faded as he realized the gravity of the situation. The UNAs, a species that had long since evolved beyond external reproductive organs, had mistaken his perfectly normal human anatomy for some kind of advanced bioweapon. As Janus collapsed, overwhelmed by the shocking revelation of human biology, Isaac's mind raced. He was deep in enemy territory, on a planet light years from Earth, surrounded by a technologically superior alien race. The UNAs and humans had been locked in a bitter conflict over resource-rich planets for years, each side pushing the boundaries of their capabilities. Senior UNAS officials swarmed into the examination room, their chitinous bodies clattering against each other in their haste. They gazed at Isaac with a mixture of fear and fascination, keeping a safe distance as if he might explode at any moment. Quarantine the facility immediately, ordered a UNAs adorned with ornate markings, clearly a high-ranking official. We must contain this biological anomaly. As the UNAs scrambled to secure the area, Isaac's military training kicked in. He recognized an opportunity in their ignorance and fear. If they believed his anatomy to be a weapon, perhaps he could use that misconception to his advantage. Escape suddenly seemed possible, and with it the chance to turn the tide of the human-UNAs conflict. Meanwhile, Janus stirred, her curiosity overcoming her initial shock. She stared at Isaac with a mix of fear and fascination, her scientific mind grappling with this new biological puzzle. This curiosity, Isaac noted, could be useful. It conflicted with the prevailing anti-human sentiment among the UNAs, potentially opening a door for an unlikely alliance. As Isaac formulated his plan, he could hear the panic spreading through the facility. The news of the human biological anomaly was racing through UNA's communication channels, causing widespread fear and forcing their military to reassess their entire strategy against humanity. In that moment, standing naked and vulnerable, yet holding unprecedented power, Isaac realized the absurd truth. His capture and the subsequent misunderstanding about human anatomy had inadvertently shifted the balance of power in the interstellar conflict. The fate of two species now hung in the balance, all because of one glimpse between a human soldier's legs. Isaac took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He had to play this situation carefully, exploiting the UNA's misconceptions while navigating the complex web of alien politics and cultural taboos. The future of humanity might well depend on how he handled the next few hours. As the facility descended into chaos around him, Isaac allowed himself a small, determined smile. Who would have thought that the most powerful weapon in this war would turn out to be the most basic aspect of human biology? Isaac's mind raced as he stood in the center of the chaotic examination room. The UNA's officials continued to chatter and gesticulate wildly around him, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking with every frantic movement. Seeing an opportunity in their panic, Isaac decided to push his advantage. He flexed his biceps and rolled his shoulders, causing the nearest UNAs to skitter backward, knocking over a tray of medical instruments. The clash of metal on the sterile floor sent another wave of alarm through the gathered aliens. "Careful now," Isaac said, his voice low and menacing. "You wouldn't want to provoke a reaction." The high-ranking UNA's official's antennae twitched nervously. "Restrain the human immediately, but do not make direct contact." Two guards approached Isaac cautiously, holding what appeared to be an energy containment field generator. Isaac made a sudden lunge towards them, causing both UNAs to fumble the device. It clattered to the ground, sparking uselessly. "Incompetent fools!" the official screeched. We must move him to a more secure location. Prepare for immediate transfer. As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Isaac caught sight of Janus. The young medical technician had regained consciousness and was watching him intently, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with a mixture of fear and something else, curiosity. Before Isaac could ponder this further, he was surrounded by a shimmering energy field. The Unas had managed to activate a portable containment unit, effectively cutting him off from direct contact with his captors. Transport the specimen to Facility Zeta, the official ordered, and someone clean up this mess. As Isaac was led out of the medical center, he noticed the extreme caution with which the Unas guards handled his containment field. They flinched at his every movement, nearly stumbling over each other in their haste to maintain a safe distance. The journey to Facility Zeta was tense. Isaac used every opportunity to unnerve his captors, making sudden movements or pressing close to the edge of his energy prison. Each time, the Unas recoiled, their mandibles clicking in agitation. Upon arrival at the new facility, Isaac found himself in a sterile, high-tech laboratory. Banks of unfamiliar equipment lined the walls, and thick, transparent barriers separated different sections of the room. A tall, imposing Unas stepped forward, its exoskeleton bearing the markings of a senior scientist. "I am Dr. Zix," it announced, voice clipped and professional. "I will be overseeing your examination, human. I advise you to cooperate fully." Isaac smiled, baring his teeth in what he knew the Unas would interpret as a threatening gesture. "I look forward to our time together, Doctor." Over the next few days, Isaac was subjected to a battery of non-invasive tests. Dr. Zix and his team worked tirelessly, always maintaining a safe distance behind their protective barriers. Isaac played his part, alternating between docile cooperation and sudden threatening movements that sent lab assistants scurrying for cover. During one particularly tense moment, Isaac lunged at the barrier separating him from a young Unas scientist. The alien let out a high-pitched shriek and bolted from the room, mandibles quivering in terror. Dr. Zix's compound eyes narrowed. "That is the third assistant to resign this week. Your reputation precedes you, human." Isaac shrugged, feigning innocence. "I can't help it if your people are jumpy, Doc." As the examinations continued, Isaac kept his senses alert, gathering every scrap of information he could about Una's physiology and technology. He noted their sensitivity to certain light frequencies, the way their exoskeletons seemed to provide excellent protection against impact, but were vulnerable to extreme temperatures. Each observation was carefully filed away, potential weapons in humanity's arsenal. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Isaac, events were unfolding elsewhere that would soon impact his situation. In a secure communication hub deep within the Unas military command, a heated debate was taking place. "We cannot allow this human bioweapon to remain on our homeworld," one general chittered, his ornate exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. "Each moment it stays here puts our entire species at risk." Another official, her carapace bearing the markings of the science division, countered, "But the potential knowledge we could gain, if we can understand and replicate this technology—" "Enough!" the Supreme Commander's booming voice cut through the argument. "We will continue to study the human, but we must also prepare our defenses, divert resources to developing new protective technologies immediately." As the Unas military scrambled to create advanced force fields and protective suits, they inadvertently weakened other aspects of their defensive capabilities. The shift in resource allocation did not go unnoticed by the keen eyes of human intelligence operatives scattered throughout the galaxy. Back in the depths of Facility Zeta, Isaac found himself face-to-face with an unexpected visitor. Janus, the medical technician from his initial capture, stood on the other side of the containment barrier, her eyes darting nervously between Isaac and the exit. "I've been assigned to assist Dr. Zix's team," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been studying your species, your anatomy. It's fascinating." Isaac raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the young Unas's apparent curiosity. "Is that so? And what have you learned, Janus?" Before she could respond, Dr. Zix entered the room, causing Janus to snap to attention. The lead scientist regarded them both with suspicion before beginning the day's tests. As Isaac submitted to yet another round of scans and probes, his mind whirled with possibilities. Janus's interest could be a valuable asset, a potential crack in the Unas' unified front against humanity, but he would need to tread carefully, balancing his act of dangerous specimen with the need to foster this budding connection. Little did Isaac know that at that very moment, light years away, a small team of human special forces was preparing for a daring rescue mission. Captain Marcus Steele, Isaac's longtime friend and comrade, studied the holographic map of the Unas' homeworld, his face set in unshakable focus. "We're coming for you, Isaac," he murmured. "Just hold on a little longer." Longer, as a familiar voice crackled through his earpiece. Isaac's eyes widened. Somehow, his team had managed to contact him, despite the Unas' advanced technology. Before Isaac could respond, the door to the examination room slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Dr. Zix entered, his compound eyes gleaming with excitement. In his lower appendages, he carried what looked like a sleek, alien tablet. "We have made a breakthrough," Dr. Zix announced, his mandibles quivering with awe-inspiring enthusiasm. "This bioscanner will finally unravel the secrets of your unique anatomy." Isaac's heart raced. If the Unas could create a detailed model of his body, his entire charade would crumble. He had to act fast. As Dr. Zix approached with the scanner, Isaac's mind whirled. He remembered an obscure detail from his xenobiology training, a particular frequency that caused mild discomfort in Unas' physiology. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. Isaac began to convulse violently, his body thrashing against the examination table. "The scanner!" he gasped between spasms. "I'm allergic." The room erupted into chaos. Alarms blared as Una's medical staff scrambled to contain what they perceived as a catastrophic reaction. Dr. Zix, caught off guard, fumbled with the bioscanner. In the confusion, Isaac saw his chance. With a swift motion, he broke free from his restraints, years of combat training taking over. He rolled off the table, his bare feet hitting the cold floor with a slap. Two Unas guards moved to intercept him, but their frail physiques were no match for Isaac's trained reflexes. With a series of quick jabs and throws, he incapacitated them both, barely breaking a sweat. Isaac quickly stripped one of the guards, donning the protective gear. The chitinous armor felt alien against his skin, but it would have to do. He snatched up the guard's weapon, a sleek device that hummed with energy. "Stop him!" Dr. Zix screeched. But Isaac was already out the door, racing down the sterile white corridors of the facility. Alarms blared throughout the complex as Isaac navigated the labyrinthine structure. He could hear the chittering of Una's guards echoing off the walls, growing closer with each passing second. Meanwhile, light years away, Captain Marcus Steele and his team had just made landfall on the Unas' homeworld. They had piggybacked on a commercial transport ship, slipping past the planet's defense grid undetected. "All right, team," Steele said, his voice low as they huddled in the shadows of a massive alien structure. "Our intel suggests Isaac's been moved to a specialized facility. We find him." Back at the original medical center, Janus received an urgent message on her communication device. Her multifaceted eyes widened as she read the alert about Isaac's escape. For a moment she hesitated. Her duty to her people warred with her insatiable curiosity about human biology. In the end, scientific fascination won out. With trembling appendages, she accessed the facility's network, using her medical credentials to disable security systems and create a clear path for Isaac's exit. As Isaac rounded another corner, he found himself face-to-face with Dr. Zix in a laboratory filled with pulsing, alien machinery. The xenobiologist's eyes narrowed with grit. "You will not escape," Dr. Zix declared, moving to block Isaac's path. "Your biology holds too many secrets." In the ensuing struggle, Isaac's elbow struck a nearby console. A surge of energy coursed through his body, emanating from an experimental device he had inadvertently activated. Suddenly, his senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. He could hear the individual clicks of Dr. Zix's mandibles, see the minute vibrations of the Una's exoskeleton. With his newly enhanced strength, Isaac easily overpowered Dr. Zix, leaving the scientist unconscious on the laboratory floor. As he turned to leave, He caught his reflection in a polished surface. His eyes glowed with an eerie internal light. Unbeknownst to Isaac, his activation of the device had triggered a silent alarm. In the UNA's High Command Center, officials huddled around screens displaying the data from the incident. "It's worse than we feared," one general chittered. "The humans can weaponize our own technology against us." As Isaac neared the facility's exit, he encountered a group of UNA's civilians. Their reactions ranged from shock to abject terror at the sight of him. Some fell to the ground, their limbs curling inward in fear. Others let out high-pitched keening noises that set Isaac's enhanced hearing on edge. He raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I mean you no harm," he said even as he edged towards the exit. The civilians parted before him like water, pressing themselves against the walls to avoid contact. Outside, Isaac found himself in a world that defied his understanding. Towering structures of iridescent material stretched towards a sky tinged with purple. Vehicles that seemed to defy gravity zipped between buildings on invisible tracks. Captain Steele and his team, having traced Isaac's location, were now faced with the daunting task of extracting him from the heavily fortified city center. They watched from a hidden vantage point as UNA's military vehicles converged on the facility. "This just got a whole lot more complicated," Steele muttered, assessing the rapidly evolving situation. Back in the facility, Janice made a decision that would alter the course of her life. She downloaded every scrap of data on human biology she could access and slipped out of the medical center. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement as she set out to find Isaac. As Isaac navigated the alien cityscape, he could feel the effects of the UNA's device continuing to alter his physiology. His muscles rippled with newfound strength, and he found he could process the cacophony of alien sounds and sights with startling clarity. He ducked into a narrow alley as a patrol of UNA soldiers marched past, their weapons at the ready. The entire planet seemed to be on high alert, all because of him. In the distance, he could hear the distinctive whine of human engines. His team was close, but so were his pursuers. Isaac took a deep breath, steeling himself for what promised to be a perilous journey through the heart of enemy territory. As he prepared to make a run for it, he caught a familiar scent on the air, one that didn't belong in this alien world. It was the antiseptic smell of the medical center, and it was getting closer. Isaac turned to see Janice emerging from the shadows, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. She clutched a data pad to her chest, her limbs trembling slightly. I want to help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's so much we don't understand about each other." Before Isaac could respond, the sound of approaching UNA's soldiers filled the air. He had to make a choice, and quickly. Trust the curious alien scientist, or make a break for it alone? The fate of two species hung in the balance as Isaac stood at this crossroads, the effects of alien technology coursing through his veins, with both salvation and capture mere moments away. Isaac locked eyes with Janice, his enhanced vision picking up the minute tremors in her exoskeleton. For a moment, time seemed to stand still in the narrow alley. "You said you want to help," Isaac said, his voice low and steady. "Now's your chance to prove it." Janice nodded, her antennae twitching nervously. "I have data," she chittered, holding up the pad clutched to her chest. "And I know ways through the city that others don't." A distant explosion rocked the ground beneath their feet. Isaac's heightened hearing picked up the sound of UNA's military vehicles approaching rapidly. "We need to move," he said, making a split-second decision. "Lead the way." Janice gestured towards a nearby maintenance hatch. "There's an underground transit system. Workers use it. We can travel undetected." As they descended into the dimly lit tunnels, Isaac marveled at his newfound abilities. He could see clearly in the near darkness, picking up details his normal human eyes would have missed. The subtle vibrations in the walls told him of approaching transports long before they came into view. They moved swiftly through the labyrinthine network, Janice's knowledge of the system proving invaluable. Isaac absorbed every detail, mentally mapping the infrastructure. This intelligence could be crucial for future human operations. "Why are you helping me?" Isaac asked as they paused at an intersection. Janice's compound eyes gleamed in the low light. "Because there's so much we don't understand about each other. This conflict, it's based on fear and ignorance. I want to change that. Before Isaac could respond, his enhanced hearing picked up a familiar voice echoing through a nearby tunnel. Human biosignature detected in Sector 7. Dr. Zix, Isaac whispered, recognizing the scientist's distinct vocal patterns. Janus's antennae went rigid with fear. He must have developed a way to track the energy signature from the device that enhanced you. They quickened their pace, diving deeper into the underground network. As they moved, Isaac noticed changes in the tunnel architecture. The walls became rougher, less maintained. The air carried hints of unfamiliar spices and the acrid tang of black market goods. Suddenly, they emerged into a vast cavern, buzzing with activity. Unas of all shapes and sizes hurried about, exchanging goods and hushed conversations. At the center of it all stood a striking female Unas, her exoskeleton adorned with intricate patterns. "Welcome to my humble operation," she said, mandibles clicking in what Isaac assumed was amusement. "I am Zara, and you, my fascinating alien friend, are causing quite a stir topside." Isaac tensed, ready for a fight, but Zara raised her upper limbs in a placating gesture. "Relax. If I wanted to turn you in, I wouldn't have let you get this far. I'm more interested in an exchange of information." Over the next hour, Isaac found himself in a tense negotiation. He carefully shared non-critical information about human technology, while Zara provided him with Una's clothing and a crude translator device. "There's a research facility," Zara said as Isaac donned the alien garments. "Top secret. Word is they're developing weapons specifically to use against humans." Isaac's mind raced with the implications. "I need to get inside." Zara's compound eyes glittered. "Now that would be quite the prize. I might be able to help for the right price." As they finalized their agreement, alarms began blaring throughout the cavern. Zara's subordinates rushed to secure their goods. "Lock down," Zara hissed. "The high command must be getting desperate." Isaac's enhanced hearing picked up the chaos above ground. Civilians panicking, security forces mobilizing. The entire planet was being shut down in an effort to contain him. "I need to move," Isaac said, adjusting his Una's disguise. "That facility won't stay unguarded for long." Janus, who had been quiet during the negotiations, stepped forward. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice firm despite her trembling limbs. Before Isaac could argue, the cavern erupted into chaos. A group of Unas burst in, their exoskeletons bearing the distinct markings of military elite. Leading them was a face Isaac recognized all too well. Captain Marcus Steele, his old friend and comrade, disguised in Una's armor. Steele's eyes widened as he spotted Isaac. "Damn, you're a sight for sore eyes," he said, his voice distorted by the translator. "But we need to move. Our cover's blown." As if on cue, the sound of genuine Una's military forces echoed from the tunnels. Dr. Zix's voice cut through the din, barking orders to his capture team. Isaac looked at Steele, then at Janus and Zara. In that moment, he knew the next few minutes would shape the course of the entire human Una's conflict. "The research facility," he said quickly. "We need to get there before Zix's team. It's our only chance to turn this around." Steele nodded, immediately grasping the situation. "Lead the way." As they raced through the tunnels towards the secret facility, Isaac's mind whirled with possibilities. The convergence of all these factions, his team, Janus, Zara's dissidents, and Dr. Zix's forces, was about to come to a head. And at the center of it all was a facility that could hold the key to interstellar peace or unending war. The group emerged from the underground into a city in turmoil. Una's civilians huddled in their homes, while security forces patrolled the streets in overwhelming numbers. In the distance, the sleek architecture of the research facility loomed, a beacon of advanced technology and potential destruction. As they approached their target, Isaac's enhanced senses picked up the telltale signs of Dr. Zix's team closing in. The fate of two species now hung in the balance, with the research facility as the focal point of their conflict. Convergence. The facility's stark silhouette against the alien sky seemed to pulse with danger and possibility. As they neared their target, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, causing the group to halt abruptly. Janus stood before them, her exoskeleton gleaming in the eerie light of the Una city. "I can help you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know this facility. I have access." Isaac's enhanced senses picked up the rapid flutter of her heart, the slight tremor in her limbs. She was terrified, but determined. Zara chittered angrily, her mandibles clicking. "We can't trust her. She's one of them." Isaac raised a hand, silencing the Una's dissident. He studied Janus intently, his newly acquired abilities allowing him to perceive minute changes in her posture and pheromone output. "Why?" he asked simply. Janus's compound eyes shimmered. "Because what we're doing, what Dr. Zix is doing, it's wrong. We need to understand each other, not destroy one another." Isaac turned to Zara, his voice low and urgent. "We need her. She has access, knowledge we don't have." Zara's antenna twitched in agitation, but she reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but she's your responsibility." As the group huddled to formulate their plan, Isaac felt another surge of energy course through his body. The world around him seemed to shift, the alien sounds and scents suddenly coalescing into recognizable patterns. He blinked, startled, as he realized he could understand the chittering conversation between Zara and her dissidents. I can understand you," he said in perfect Unas, his mandibles clicking in surprise at his own words. Janus's eyes widened. "The enhancement device, it must have activated your latent linguistic centers." Zara's team worked quickly, using their black market connections to fabricate convincing disguises and security clearances. Isaac marveled at the intricacy of the Una's garments, the complex patterns designed to denote rank and function. As Janus helped Isaac adjust his disguise, their hands brushed. Isaac felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with his enhancements. He caught her gaze, seeing a mixture of fascination and something deeper reflected in her compound eyes. "Ready?" he asked softly in Una's. She nodded, her antennae quivering slightly. "Ready." The infiltration began smoothly. Janus's medical credentials and Isaac's newfound linguistic abilities allowed them to move through the facility's outer defenses with ease. The vast underground complex sprawled before them, a maze of advanced technology and pulsing energy fields. As they delved deeper, Isaac's enhanced senses picked up traces of a familiar scent. "Steel," he muttered. "He's here." Zara chittered in alarm. "Your human allies, here!" Before Isaac could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The sound of weapons fire echoed from a distant corridor. "Distractions in place," one of Zara's team reported. "We need to move fast." Isaac and Janus broke away from the main group, heading towards the central research lab. The facility's design became more complex, with pulsing force fields and strange, organic-looking technology lining the walls. They burst into the central lab, a vast chamber filled with swirling holographic displays and ominous-looking machinery. At the center stood a massive device, its core pulsing with sickly green energy. "By the hive," Janus gasped. "This is it, the anti-human weapon." Isaac's blood ran cold as he absorbed the implications. This device, if activated, could wipe out humanity across multiple star systems. He moved quickly, fingers flying over alien controls as he worked to sabotage the weapon. Janus accessed a nearby console, her limbs a blur as she downloaded critical research data. "Isaac," she called, her voice tight with urgency. "You need to see this." He joined her, his enhanced vision allowing him to process the complex Una's script with startling speed. The weapon's design was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology, an error that could have catastrophic consequences for both species. Suddenly, the lab's doors hissed open. A squad of Una's security forces poured in, weapons raised. "Step away from the consoles," the leader barked. Isaac moved with inhuman speed, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge the first volley of energy blasts. He grabbed Janus, pulling her behind a bank of equipment as return fire scorched the air around them. "Keep working," he shouted, snatching up a fallen Una's weapon. "I'll hold them off." The battle raged, Isaac's enhanced abilities allowing him to outmaneuver the Una's guards. He moved with fluid grace, each action precise and devastatingly effective. Yet for every guard he subdued, More seemed to pour in. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Isaac! Duck!" He dropped instinctively as a barrage of human weapons fire tore through the lab. Captain Steele and his team had arrived, their Una's disguises discarded in favor of full combat gear. "Took you long enough," Isaac called, a grin spreading across his face despite the dire situation. The reunion was short-lived. From another entrance, Dr. Zix's capture squad burst in, adding to the mayhem. The Una's scientist's eyes locked onto Isaac, a manic gleam in their depths. "The specimen!" Zix screeched. "Secure the specimen at all costs!" The lab became a three-way battleground, with Isaac and Janus caught in the middle. Equipment exploded around them, showering the combatants with debris and sparks. An ominous rumble shook the facility. Isaac's enhanced hearing picked up distant explosions in the whine of energy weapons. "They're going to destroy the facility," Janus realized, her voice filled with horror. The High Command, they'd rather see it all destroyed than risk it falling into human hands. Isaac's mind raced. They needed to escape, but the data they'd uncovered was too vital to leave behind. He looked at Janus, seeing his own commitment reflected in her alien features. "We're getting out of here," he said firmly. "All of us, together." As if in response to his words, the facility's emergency containment protocols activated. Massive blast doors began to seal, cutting off their escape routes one by one. Isaac's enhanced vision picked out a possible escape route through a series of experimental chambers. It would be dangerous, possibly lethal, but it was their only chance. "This way," he shouted, grabbing Janus's hand. "Steele, we need to move." As they raced towards the experimental chambers, Isaac could hear Dr. Zix's enraged shrieks fading behind them. The facility shuddered around them, the distant rumble of explosions growing louder. They reached the first chamber, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to distort the very fabric of space. Isaac's mind processed the alien technology at an incredible speed, calculating the precise moment to move. "Now," he yelled, pulling Janus through the energy field. They emerged on the other side, Steele and his team right behind them. The next chamber presented a different challenge, a maze of shifting gravity fields that threatened to tear them apart. Isaac guided them through, his enhanced senses allowing him to predict the field fluctuations seconds before they occurred. With each obstacle, Isaac and Janus were forced to work in perfect synchronization. Their movements became a complex dance, human and Una's physiology complementing each other in ways neither had thought possible. As they navigated the treacherous path, Isaac found himself hyper-aware of Janus's presence, the way her exoskeleton shimmered in the pulsing lights, the determined set of her mandibles, the surprising grace of her movements. He realized with a start that he no longer saw her as alien, but as a trusted ally, perhaps even more. They emerged from the final chamber into a vast hangar. Emergency klaxons blared as Una's evacuation ships prepared for launch. In the distance, the sky burned with the approach of orbital strike weapons. "We need a ship," Steele growled, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene. Isaac's gaze locked onto a sleek experimental craft at the far end of the hangar. "There," he said, his enhanced vision picking out the details of its advanced propulsion system. "That's our ticket out of here." As they sprinted towards their salvation, Isaac could hear the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Dr. Zix's obsession had driven him to follow them into the very jaws of destruction. The facility began to crumble around them, entire sections collapsing as the orbital strikes found their mark. The hangar's massive doors started to close, threatening to seal them in. Isaac pushed his enhanced body to its limits, half carrying Janus as they made a final desperate sprint for the ship. Steele and his team provided covering fire, holding off the security forces and Zix's persistent capture squad. They reached the ship with seconds to spare. Isaac's fingers flew over the controls, his newly acquired knowledge of Una's technology allowing him to bring the engines online. As the ship lifted off, Isaac caught a final glimpse of Dr. Zix's face, contorted with rage and frustration. The Una's scientist's obsession had blinded him to the larger implications of his actions, the possibility of peace that Isaac and Janus now carried with them. The experimental craft shot out of the closing hangar doors, accelerating at a speed that would have crushed an unenhanced human. Behind them, the research facility erupted in a massive explosion. The secret weapon and its terrible potential lost forever. As they broke atmosphere, the true scale of the situation became clear. The UNA's homeworld was in turmoil, protests erupting in every major city. The High Command's drastic actions had backfired, sowing the seeds of revolution among their own people. Isaac turned to Janus, seeing the weight of everything they'd experienced reflected in her alien eyes. They had uncovered truths that could change the course of the war, perhaps even end it, but the journey ahead would be fraught with danger, political minefields, and the challenge of bridging two vastly different species. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Isaac felt the enhancement device pulse within him once more. Whatever changes it had wrought in him, whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that the true test was just beginning. With Janus by his side and the fate of two species in their hands, they set course for an uncertain future, carrying with them the hope for a new understanding between humans and UNAs. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Isaac felt the enhancement device pulse within him once more. The moment of relief was short-lived as alarms blared throughout the experimental craft. The UNA's homeworld behind them erupted in a fiery maelstrom as the orbital strike commenced. "We're not out of this yet," Steele barked, his fingers flying over unfamiliar controls. "The facility's going down, but they've launched pursuit craft." Isaac's enhanced senses picked up the distant whine of engines. He turned to Janus, seeing willpower etched in her alien features. "We need to go back," he said, surprising himself. "There's still too much at stake." Janus's compound eyes widened. "Are you certain the risk is necessary?" Isaac finished. He plotted a course back towards the crumbling research facility, pushing the experimental craft to its limits. As they approached, the true scale of destruction became apparent. Massive sections of the underground complex had been exposed, wreathed in flames and billowing smoke. Isaac's enhanced vision picked out multiple heat signatures, survivors desperately trying to escape. "There," he pointed, guiding the craft towards a partially collapsed hangar. "We can set down there." The landing was rough, the craft's unfamiliar systems bucking against Isaac's control. As soon as they touched down, he was moving. "Steele, secure the perimeter. Janus, with me." They plunged into the chaos of the disintegrating facility. Isaac's enhanced reflexes allowed him to navigate the treacherous terrain with ease, guiding Janus past falling debris and unstable structures. His heightened senses picked up the acrid smell of burning circuitry and the distant rumble of secondary explosions. "We need to reach the central labs," Janus shouted over the din. "If any prototypes of the weapon survived..." A massive tremor shook the facility, causing a section of ceiling to collapse directly in their path. Isaac moved with inhuman speed, tackling Janus and rolling them both to safety as tons of debris crashed down. "That was impressive," Janus said, her antennae quivering. Isaac helped her up, acutely aware of the alien texture of her exoskeleton. "All part of the service," he quipped, pushing aside the strange flutter in his chest. They pressed on, Isaac's enhanced strength proving crucial as they navigated through partially blocked corridors and over precarious gaps. The central lab, when they reached it, was a scene of utter devastation. Sparks flew from destroyed consoles, and the air was thick with smoke. "There!" Janus pointed towards a sealed chamber, miraculously intact amidst the destruction. "The prototypes!" Isaac approached the heavy blast door, his enhanced vision picking out the complex locking mechanism. With a grunt of effort, he gripped the edge of the door, muscles straining as he slowly forced it open. Inside, they found a row of sleek, ominous devices, miniaturized versions of the massive weapon they'd seen earlier. Janus moved quickly, her expert fingers dismantling key components. "I need you to destroy the power cores," she instructed. "They're too robust for me to disable quickly." Isaac nodded, focusing his enhanced strength on crushing the delicate internal mechanisms of each prototype. As he worked, a realization struck him. "Janus, how did you know these would be here? This level of detail wasn't in the data we accessed earlier." Before she could answer, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Because she helped design them, of course. They spun to see Dr. Zix standing in the doorway, flanked by his capture squad. The UNA's scientist's eyes gleamed with a mixture of triumph and madness. "Did you really think you could trust her?" Zix sneered. "A mere human, enhanced or not." Isaac's mind raced, processing this new information. He turned to Janus, searching her alien features for any sign of deception. "Is it true?" Janus's antennae drooped. "Isaac, The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. A massive support beam came crashing down, separating Isaac and Janus from Zix and his squad. In the confusion, Isaac grabbed Janus's arm, pulling her towards a nearby emergency exit. "We'll discuss this later," he said firmly. "Right now, we need to get out of here." They raced through the crumbling facility, Isaac's enhanced senses guiding them through the chaos. He could hear Zix and his squad in pursuit, their angry chittering growing closer. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Captain Steele and his team. "There you are," Steele exclaimed. "We need to move now. The whole place is coming down." They made for the hangar, but another explosion rocked the facility, cutting off their planned escape route. Isaac's enhanced vision picked out an alternative. "This way," he shouted, leading them towards a restricted area. They burst into a vast chamber filled with sleek experimental spacecraft. Isaac's mind raced, processing the unfamiliar technology at an incredible speed. "These are our ticket out," he announced, making for the nearest craft. As Isaac worked to activate the ship, Janus interfaced with its systems, her knowledge of UNA's technology proving invaluable. The rest of the team provided covering fire as Zix and his squad entered the hangar. The experimental craft hummed to life just as Zix made a desperate lunge towards them. Isaac met him at the entrance ramp, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge the UNA's scientist's wild swings. Suddenly, Isaac felt a sharp pain in his arm. Zix had managed to inject him with something, a sickly green fluid disappearing into his veins. Almost immediately, Isaac felt his enhanced abilities begin to fluctuate wildly. Despite the handicap, Isaac managed to subdue Zix, securing him as a prisoner. They dragged the unconscious scientist on board just as the hangar began to collapse around them. With alarms blaring and debris raining down, Isaac and Janus worked in tandem to pilot the unfamiliar craft. Their combined skills, her understanding of UNA's technology and his combat experience, allowed them to navigate through the chaos and into the planet's atmosphere. As they broke through the clouds, Isaac felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The serum Zix had injected was taking its toll. His vision blurred, the ship's controls becoming unfocused. "Janus," he managed to say, his voice weak, "you need to take over." The last thing Isaac saw before losing consciousness was Janus's determined face, her compound eyes reflecting the stars as she took full control of the alien craft. They were heading into unknown territory, with a captured enemy scientist, stolen research data, and the fate of two species hanging in the balance. As darkness claimed him, Isaac couldn't help but wonder, had he made a terrible mistake in trusting Janus? And what consequences would his choice have for the future of human-UNA's relations? Isaac's consciousness flickered, images and sensations blurring together as the experimental UNA's craft hurtled through space. He caught glimpses of Janus's determined face, heard Captain Steele barking orders, felt the ship shudder beneath him. Then, darkness claimed him once more. When he next opened his eyes, the world spun violently. Alarms blared, red emergency lights bathing the cockpit in an eerie glow. Isaac tried to focus, but his enhanced senses fluctuated wildly, alternating between hyper-awareness and near blindness. "We're losing control," Janus shouted, her multiple limbs working furiously across the alien control panel. "The navigation system is malfunctioning." Steele gripped the back of her seat, his knuckles tightening. "Can you stabilize it?" "I'm trying, but..." Janus was cut off as the ship lurched, throwing everyone off balance. Isaac felt a surge of strength and launched himself towards the co-pilot's chair, his body moving with inhuman speed. "What's happening?" he demanded, fighting waves of nausea as he strapped himself in. Janus's compound eyes flickered towards him, surprise evident in her alien features. the ship's making random jumps through different star systems. I can't. Another violent shudder rocked the craft. Through the view screen, Isaac watched as unfamiliar stars streaked past, replaced by new constellations in the blink of an eye. "Life support's failing," one of Steele's men called out from the back of the ship. "Oxygen levels dropping." Isaac's enhanced vision picked out a complex array of controls. "Janus, talk me through this. What do we need to do?" For the next harrowing minutes, Human and Una's worked in perfect synchronization. Janus's knowledge of the alien technology guided Isaac's actions as they fought to stabilize the ship's systems. The rest of the team scrambled to make emergency repairs, following Janus's rapid-fire instructions. As Isaac reached for a panel above his head, he felt his strength suddenly vanish. He collapsed back into his seat, gasping for breath. Janus's cool, chitinous hand gripped his arm. "Isaac, are you all right?" He shook his head, trying to clear the fog from his mind. "The serum. It's getting worse." Before Janus could respond, the ship gave one final, violent lurch. When the world stopped spinning, Isaac looked out the view screen and froze. They were in the middle of a vast debris field. Twisted metal and shattered hulls floated past, remnants of both Human and Una's design. Energy readings spiked erratically across the sensor displays. "By the skies," Janus whispered. "This is the Karshalan graveyard." Steele leaned forward, his face grim. "The site of the bloodiest battle in the early war. What the hell are we doing here?" "The random jumps," Isaac said, his tactical mind cutting through the haze of his condition. "We must have bounced through half the galaxy before ending up here." Janus's antenna twitched nervously. "This area is highly restricted. The energy signatures from weapon debris make it almost impossible to navigate safely." As if to emphasize her point, a piece of debris glanced off their hull, sending vibrations through the ship. Isaac gritted his teeth and gripped the controls. "Then let's get out of here. Janus, can you get the sensors working?" She nodded, her multiple limbs dancing across the controls. "I'll try to calibrate them to filter out the background noise." For the next tense hour, Isaac piloted the ship through the deadly obstacle course. His enhanced reflexes, when they functioned, allowed him to execute maneuvers that would have been impossible for a normal human. But each time his abilities fluctuated, they came dangerously close to collision. Janus worked furiously beside him, calling out sensor readings and danger zones. The rest of the team watched in tense silence, acutely aware that their lives hung on the abilities of a Human-Una's duo. As they navigated around a particularly large piece of debris, the shattered remnants of what might have once been a Una's dreadnought, Steele suddenly leaned forward. "Wait, what's that?" Isaac followed his gaze, his enhanced vision picking out details in the darkness of space. There, nestled within a hollowed-out asteroid, was a structure that was decidedly not debris. "It's a station," Isaac said, zooming in on the image. "Human design." Janus confirmed his observation. "It appears to be a military outpost, but it's not appearing in any of the ship's databanks." Before they could discuss further, a series of energy signatures lit up their sensor displays. Beam weapons lanced out from the asteroid, narrowly missing their ship. "Evasive maneuvers!" Steele shouted. Isaac's hands flew over the controls, his enhanced reflexes kicking in just in time to avoid another barrage. "Those are human weapons," he called out. "Automated defense systems." Steele pushed his way to the front of the cockpit. "I have an idea. Get me close enough to transmit." As Isaac piloted the ship in a series of wild dodges and turns, Steele worked on the communication panel. Just as another volley of energy beams cut through space around them, Steele's voice boomed out. "This is Captain Marcus Steele. Authorization code Echo Tango 719. Stand down defense systems immediately." For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, as suddenly as they had begun, the energy beams ceased. The asteroid's defense turrets powered down, leaving them in eerie silence. Isaac let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Nice work, Captain." Steele nodded grimly. "Let's hope the docking systems are as responsive. Take us in, Lieutenant." As Isaac guided the Una's craft towards the hidden human outpost, he felt another wave of dizziness wash over him. his vision blurred, the controls becoming unfocused beneath his hands. "Janus," he managed to say, his voice weak, "I need you to take over." The last thing Isaac saw before darkness claimed him once more was Janus's determined face, her compound eyes reflecting the approaching station as she smoothly took control of the ship. As consciousness slipped away, Isaac couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. Here he was, trusting his life, all their lives, to a member of the species he'd been trained to fight. Whatever challenges lay ahead in that abandoned outpost, whatever revelations awaited them about the true nature of this war, one thing was clear. The old boundaries between human and Unas were already starting to blur. Isaac's eyes snapped open, his enhanced senses suddenly flooding back to full capacity. He found himself lying on a makeshift medical cot in what appeared to be the outpost's infirmary. Jaina stood nearby, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Welcome back," she said, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim light. "How do you feel?" Isaac sat up slowly, testing his limbs. The wild fluctuations in his abilities seemed to have stabilized. "Better," he replied, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "What happened?" Before Janus could answer, the infirmary door slid open with a hiss. Dr. Zix entered, flanked by two of Steele's men. The Una's scientist's demeanor had changed. Gone was the manic gleam in his eyes, replaced by a look of grudging respect. "Your condition has been stabilized," Zix explained, his voice rasping. "It seems the combination of Una's biotechnology and human physiology is more resilient than I anticipated." Isaac exchanged a glance with Janus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. They had worked together to save him, human and Una's cooperation at its finest. A commotion in the corridor drew their attention. Captain Steele burst into the infirmary, his face a mask of tension. "Lieutenant, we need you in the command center. Now!" Isaac swung his legs off the cot, surprised at how steady he felt. "What's the situation, sir?" Steele's heart made. "We've got company, a lot of it." The small group made their way through the winding corridors of the outpost, emerging into a bustling command center. Screens flickered to life, displaying a sea of stars punctuated by the sleek forms of warships. "My God," Isaac breathed, his enhanced vision picking out details on the nearest vessels. "That's Admiral Vance's rescue fleet." Steele nodded grimly. "And they're not alone. Look." He gestured to another screen, where a second group of ships was rapidly approaching. Their design was unmistakably Una's. "Commander Krell's battle group," Janus said, her voice tight with concern. Steele turned to face them, his expression grave. "We're sitting on a powder keg, people. Two opposing fleets both spoiling for a fight, and us caught in the middle with an experimental weapon that could turn the tide of the war." Isaac's tactical mind raced, processing the implications. "Sir, if we can use the weapon to force a ceasefire—" "My thoughts exactly, Lieutenant," Steele interrupted. "But we need to move fast. Vance is hailing us now." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Helena Vance. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the mixed group before her. "Captain Steele, report. What in blazes is going on out there? And why are there Unas on my screen?" Steele stepped forward, his back posture impeccable. "Admiral, the situation is complicated. We've uncovered information that could change the course of the war, but we need time to explain." Vance's expression hardened. "Time is a luxury we don't have, Captain. The Una's fleet will be in weapons range in less than an hour. I need to know if you're compromised." Isaac felt a surge of frustration. They were so close to a breakthrough, yet old prejudices threatened to undo everything. He stepped forward, ignoring protocol. "Admiral, with all due respect, we have an opportunity here to end this war. The weapon we've discovered—" A sudden alarm cut through the air, red warning lights bathing the command center in an eerie glow. One of Steele's men called out from a nearby console. "Sir, we've got a security breach in the detention area." Steele whirled around. "Zix!" But the Una scientist was already moving, his long limbs carrying him swiftly towards a communications terminal. Before anyone could stop him, he had accessed the system, his fingers flying over the alien interface. No, Janus cried, lunging towards him. But it was too late. Zix turned, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of triumph and fear. I've sent a distress call to Commander Krell. He'll come for me. For us. The command center erupted into chaos. Steele barked orders to his men, trying to contain the situation. On the monitor, Admiral Vance demanded explanations, her face a mask of fury. Isaac's enhanced senses kicked into overdrive, processing the flood of information. He saw Janus struggling with Zix, heard the distant rumble of the Una's fleet's engines, felt the vibrations of the outpost's defense systems coming online. In that moment of crisis, a clarity descended upon him. He knew what needed to be done. "Captain," he called out, his voice cutting through the din, "the weapon. We need to use it now." Steele turned to him, understanding dawning in his eyes. He nodded sharply. "Do it, Lieutenant. You and Janus. You're the only ones who can operate that thing." Isaac locked eyes with Janus across the room. She disengaged from Zix, leaving him to Steele's men, and moved swiftly to Isaac's side. Together they raced through the corridors of the outpost, their footsteps echoing in the metallic hallways. They burst into the weapon control room, a cavernous space dominated by a massive pulsing device. "Janus, start the power-up sequence," Isaac ordered, his hands flying over the human-designed controls. "I'll target both fleets simultaneously." As they worked, Isaac's enhanced hearing picked up the distant sound of weapons fire. The battle had begun. The weapon hummed to life, its energy signature building to a crescendo. Isaac's fingers danced across the targeting interface, locking onto both human and Una's ships. "Ready?" he asked, his finger hovering over the activation switch. Janus nodded, her alien features set in steadfast perseverance. "Ready." Isaac took a deep breath and pressed the button. A wave of invisible energy burst forth from the outpost, expanding rapidly into space. On the monitors, they watched as ship after ship, human and Una's alike, suddenly went dark. The weapon had worked perfectly, disabling both fleets in one fell swoop. For a moment there was silence. Then the communication channels exploded with chatter, confusion, anger, and fear from both sides. Isaac keyed the outpost's main broadcast frequency. "This is Lieutenant Isaac Brennan of the Unified Earth Defense Force. To all ships in the vicinity, stand down. I repeat, stand down. We have information critical to both human and Una's forces. The future of both our species depends on what happens next." As Isaac's words echoed across space, the debris field around them began to shift. A massive shape emerged from the shadows, dwarfing even the largest ships in the assembled fleets. Ancient and alien, the mysterious vessel began to pulse with awakening energy. Isaac and Janus shared a look of awe and trepidation. Whatever came next, they knew their journey was far from finished. The true test of human Una's cooperation was about to begin. The ancient vessel loomed before them, its massive form dwarfing even the largest ships in the assembled fleets. As Isaac and Janus approached in a shuttle, they marveled at the intricate patterns etched into its hull, pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. "I've never seen anything like it," Janus whispered, her compound eyes reflecting the alien patterns. Isaac nodded, his enhanced vision picking up details invisible to others. "It's not just a ship. It's alive, somehow." Their shuttle, along with several others carrying members of both human and Una's crews, glided into a cavernous opening that had appeared in the vessel's side. As they touched down, Isaac felt a subtle vibration through the deck plates, as if the ship itself was acknowledging their presence. The mixed team disembarked, their footsteps echoing in the vast, dimly lit chamber. The air was thick with an electric tension, a sense of ancient power lying dormant for eons. Captain Steele's voice crackled over their comms. "Remember, people, we're here to investigate and gather information. Stay alert and report anything unusual immediately." Isaac and Janus exchanged a glance, both knowing that on a ship like this everything was unusual. They moved forward, their teams spreading out to cover more ground. The interior of the vessel was a maze of corridors and chambers, each filled with technology beyond their comprehension. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, showing star charts of unfamiliar galaxies and diagrams of strange, alien life forms. As they ventured deeper, Isaac and Janice found themselves naturally pairing up, their movements in sync as they navigated the alien environment. They entered a large circular room, its walls lined with what appeared to be stasis pods. "Look at this," Janice called out, her antennae twitching with excitement as she examined one of the pods. Inside, they could see the blurred outline of a creature unlike anything they had encountered before. Isaac approached a control panel near the center of the room, his fingers hovering over the unfamiliar interface. "I wonder if we can—" Before he could finish his thought, his hand accidentally brushed against a sensor. The room suddenly came alive with light, a massive holographic display materializing above them. A voice, neither male nor female, human nor Una's, filled the chamber. "Welcome, children of the stars. We are the progenitors, and this is our legacy." Isaac and Janice stood transfixed as the hologram unfolded the incredible story before them. The progenitors, an ancient and highly advanced race, had foreseen a catastrophic event that would sterilize much of the galaxy. This ship, this Ark, was their answer, a vessel designed to preserve life from across the cosmos. "Both your species, human and Una's, were among those we chose to save," the hologram continued. "You are more alike than you know, born from the same cosmic cradle." The implications of this revelation hit Isaac like a physical blow. He turned to Janice, seeing his own shock mirrored in her alien features. "This changes everything," he breathed. Before they could process this further, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red light flooded the chamber, and the hologram flickered out of existence. "What's happening?" Janice shouted over the noise. Isaac's enhanced senses kicked into overdrive, processing multiple inputs at once. "The ship's defense systems, they've activated." From hidden compartments in the walls, sleek robotic forms emerged. Their metallic bodies gleamed in the pulsing red light as they advanced on Isaac and Janice. Isaac's combat training took over. He dodged the first Guardian's attack, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to move with inhuman speed. As he grappled with the robot, he called out to Janice, "Can you shut them down?" Janice was already at the control panel, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "I'm trying. The systems are complex, but there are similarities to Una's technology. I might be able to—" Her words were cut off as another Guardian lunged at her. Isaac broke free from his opponent and tackled the robot, giving Janice the space she needed to work. The battle raged on, Isaac's enhanced abilities proving crucial in fending off the relentless Guardians. His muscles burned with exertion, but he pushed through, knowing that Janice needed time to disable the defense systems. Just as it seemed they might be overwhelmed, the Guardians suddenly froze in place. The alarms ceased, leaving them in an eerie silence broken only by their heavy breathing. "I did it," Janice said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and pride. "I managed to override the defense protocols." Isaac approached her, his admiration evident. "Quick thinking. We make a good team." Their moment of respite was short-lived. A distant explosion rocked the ship, followed by the sound of panicked voices over their comms. "This is Steele," the captain's voice came through, tight with tension. "We've got a situation. Dr. Zix has gone rogue. He's accessed some kind of advanced technology and is attempting to take control of the ship. All teams converge on the engine room immediately." Isaac and Janice shared a look of drive. They knew the stakes had just gotten higher. Without a word, they moved in unison, racing through the alien corridors towards the heart of the ship. As they ran, Isaac's mind raced with the implications of what they had learned. Humans and Unas, born from the same cosmic cradle. The war that had defined both their lives was based on a lie. And now, with Dr. Zix's actions threatening to undo everything, they faced a challenge that would test the very foundations of their newfound understanding. The engine room loomed ahead, its massive doors standing open. Inside, they could hear the hum of ancient machinery coming to life, feel the vibrations of power building beneath their feet. And somewhere in that technological maelstrom was Dr. Zix, his actions driven by a misguided desire for power that could doom them all. Isaac and Janice paused at the threshold, each taking a deep breath. They knew that what lay beyond those doors would determine not just their fate, but the fate of their species and countless others preserved within this cosmic arc. With a shared nod of understanding, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the heart of the progenitor's legacy. Legacy of the progenitors. As they entered the engine room, the scene before them was chaos incarnate. Dr. Zix stood atop a raised platform, his tentacles intertwined with pulsing cables of alien design. The air crackled with energy, and the floor beneath their feet vibrated with increasing intensity. "Zix!" Isaac called out, his voice barely audible above the din of alarms and machinery. "Stop this madness!" The UNA's scientist turned, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and elation. "Madness! This is salvation! With this technology, we can reshape the galaxy." Janus stepped forward, her antennae twitching as she assessed the situation. "The ship's systems are overloading. If we don't stabilize them, we'll lose everything, including the preserved species." Isaac's mind raced, processing the information flooding his enhanced senses. He could see the energy fluctuations, hear the strain in the ancient machinery, feel the increasing heat radiating from the power core. "Janus," he said, turning to his partner, "can you access the main controls?" She nodded, already moving towards a nearby console. "I'll try to reroute power and stabilize the systems." As Janus worked, Isaac approached Dr. Zix cautiously. "Doctor, please, we've discovered something incredible here. The progenitors, they saved both our species. We're more alike than we ever knew." Zix hesitated, his grip on the alien technology loosening slightly. What do you mean?" Taking advantage of the moment, Isaac pressed on. "This ship, it's an ark. The progenitors preserved life from across the galaxy, including humans and UNAs. We share a common origin." The revelation seemed to shake Zix to his core. His tentacles retreated from the ship's systems, and he stumbled back, overwhelmed by the implications. Seizing the opportunity, Isaac turned to Janus. "Now's our chance. We need to broadcast this information to both fleets." Janus's fingers flew over the alien interface, her expertise in UNA's technology, allowing her to navigate the complex systems. "I think I can do it, but I'll need more power." Isaac nodded, understanding immediately. He moved to a nearby power coupling, his enhanced strength allowing him to manually override the safety protocols. With a grunt of effort, he redirected the energy flow to Janus's console. The ship hummed with renewed vigor as Janus began compiling the data. "I'm creating a massive data package," she explained. "Everything we've learned about the progenitors, our shared history, the Ark's scientific knowledge, it's all here." As they worked, Captain Steele's voice crackled over their comms. "Brennan, Janus, we've got a situation with the stasis pods. They're failing." Isaac's heart raced. They couldn't let those ancient species die. "Captain, can you stabilize them?" "We're trying," Steele replied, his voice strained. "We're using parts from non-essential systems to jury-rig a power supply, but it's touch and go." Janus looked up from her work, her compound eyes reflecting the urgency of the situation. "The data package is ready. I'm setting it to broadcast on all frequencies." With a nod from Isaac, she activated the transmission. The ship shuddered as it channeled vast amounts of energy into the broadcast, sending the information hurtling through space towards both fleets and their homeworlds. As the data flooded out, the ship's systems began to overload. Sparks flew from consoles, and the air grew thick with the scent of burning circuitry. "We need to get out of here," Isaac shouted, grabbing Janus and pulling her towards the exit. They ran through the corridors, the ship groaning and shuddering around them. As they neared the evacuation point, Isaac's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of weapons powering down outside the Ark. "It worked," he breathed. The data transmission overloaded their weapon systems. They reached the shuttle bay, where Steele and the rest of the team were waiting. As they boarded, Isaac noticed Dr. Zix being led onto another shuttle, looking shell-shocked but compliant. As they departed the Ark, Isaac and Janus watched through the view screen as the ancient vessel began to power down, its mission finally complete after millennia of silent vigilance. Aboard the human outpost, they were met with a scene of controlled chaos. Comm channels were flooded with chatter as both human and UNA's leaders grappled with the revelations contained in the data transmission. Admiral Vance approached them, her face a mixture of awe and concern. "Lieutenant Brennan, Scientist Janus, your actions may have just prevented an interstellar war, but we're not out of the woods yet." She gestured towards a holographic display of the debris field. "The energy signatures out there are still highly unstable. If we don't find a way to neutralize them, we could be looking at a catastrophic chain reaction." Isaac and Janus exchanged a look, both realizing the same thing simultaneously. "The progenitor technology," Janus said. "We might be able to adapt it to neutralize the debris field." Isaac nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need to modify the Ark's energy pulse emitter. With some reconfiguration, we could generate a wave that would neutralize the dangerous remnants." Admiral Vance raised an eyebrow. "Can you do it?" "We can," Isaac replied, his voice filled with conviction. "But we'll need to work fast." As they set to work, Isaac couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly he and Janus functioned as a team. Her expertise in UNA's technology complemented his enhanced abilities and human intuition perfectly. Hours passed in a blur of feverish activity. Isaac used his strength to manually adjust power couplings, while Janus reconfigured the main energy distributor. Around them, human and UNA's crew members worked side by side, united in their efforts to prevent disaster. Finally, as the Ark's systems reached critical levels, they were ready. Isaac and Janus stood before the makeshift control panel, their hands hovering over the activation switch. "Ready?" Isaac asked, echoing their earlier moment in the weapon control room. Janus nodded, her alien features set in steadfast focus. "Ready?" Together, they activated the emitter. A massive wave of energy burst forth from the Ark, spreading through the debris field. On the monitors, they watched as the dangerous energy signatures began to dissipate, rendered harmless by the progenitor technology. As the wave expanded, it cleared the communication interference that had plagued the region. Suddenly, clear transmissions flooded in from both fleets and their homeworlds. Admiral Vance turned to Isaac and Janus, a rare smile on her face. "You've done it. Not only have you neutralized the immediate threat, but you've opened up a whole new era of exploration and potential colonization." As the immediate crisis passed, Isaac found himself standing beside Janus on the observation deck of the outpost. They watched as human and UNA's ships began to intermingle, no longer adversaries, but potential allies in a vast, mysterious universe. "What happens now?" Janus asked, her voice soft with wonder. Isaac took her hand, marveling at the contrast between his 5 fingers and her 3. "Now," he said, "we face the future together." As they stood there, united despite their differences, Isaac knew that their journey was not nearly finished. The galaxy beckoned, filled with mysteries to unravel and challenges to overcome. But with the knowledge of the progenitors and the newfound alliance between humans and UNAs, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The stars stretched out before them, infinite in their possibilities, waiting to be explored by this new, united force of cosmic siblings. And as the first joint human-UNA's expedition prepared to depart, Isaac and Janus knew that they would be at the forefront, leading the way into a future bright with promise and discovery.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.